Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am Flash, and thank you for joining me for another Marvel Snap video and for another episode of Yeah or Nah, where we break down the brand new card coming into Marvel Snap. And this week's card, Fenris Wolf. Let's learn a little bit more about the character before we get into the full breakdown and review and whether or not you should spend your hard-earned resources on this card. Let's check it out. Alright, so before I get into the complete lore here surrounding Fenris Wolf, just a quick fun fact. The very first issue that this appeared in was Journey into Mystery, which is, with Thor. Issue number 114, and just a quick fun fact that comes along with that is that is actually also the first appearance of Absorbing Man, as he was known as Absorbing Man, because the character had appeared before, right? Carl Creel, right? But that was the first time he was revealed, right, as being Absorbing Man. So Absorbing Man officially and Fenris Wolf both appeared together for the first time in the same comic. Fun fact. So, Fenris Wolf is a creature of the Asgardian dimension who is said to be an offspring of Loki and the giant Angrboda. It is a huge wolf, right? Usually height 15 feet tall, with human-like intelligence, vast strength, and the capacity to change its shape to that of a god or to change its size to that of a real wolf. Before it reached maturity, Fenris threatened Iduna, keeper of the god's golden apples of immortality, and was banished to Varenheim by Hakon the Hunter. Just as Fenris reached maturity, the Asgardian gods decided it would be unsafe to allow Fenris to roam the land unfettered. Naturally, they took to playing a game with the wolf to see how easily it could snap the bonds they put on it. Each time they forged a thicker and stronger chain of iron, but Fenris broke them all. Finally, Odin commanded one of the dwarves to forge an enchanted fetter. The dwarf did so, creating a thin, silk-like substance of phenomenal durability called Gleipnir. Or Gleipnir? Close, I'm sure. When the gods entreated Fenris to try to break this binding, the wolf god sensed that the fragile-looking substance was a trick. Fenris agreed to let him put the bonds around it only if there was a god willing to put his hand in the wolf's mouth as a gesture of trust. If the bonds did prove to be unbreakable and the gods did not honor their agreement and release him, Fenris would bite. Among the gods assembled for this task, only Tyr, the courageous god of war, was willing to make such a sacrifice. He placed his right hand between the wolf's huge fangs as the bonds were put in place, and where Fenris learned that the more he struggled, the tighter the bonds were drawn. It bit off Tyr's hand. The gods then bound Fenris to a rock, where it has been kept to this day. It is prophesied that when Ragnarok, the twilight of the Asgardian gods, occurs, Fenris will devour Odin. Fenris was killed in the final Ragnarok, although what death means to the Asgardians has yet to be seen. Now, I'm sure most of you have, whatever familiarity you have with this character naturally has come from the MCU, the movie, Ragnarok, and the iconic fight there against Thor. So, this is a strong character within the lore of Marvel. Let's get into a little bit about the powers this character possesses. Some of this we don't have to necessarily go over, right? The superhuman strength, speed, agility, shape-shifting is some of the stuff that we're going to touch more on. A couple things here to point out along with the shape-shifting, some bullet points. Anthropomorphism. It can assume the form of either an immensely strong and virtually invulnerable large wolf, or that of a comparable strong wolf-like humanoid. In this form, it possesses powerful teeth and claws, right? Size alteration. As time passes by and or with each battle it fights, it can grow larger and stronger with each moment. Very similar to Hulk in a way, right? Just different. Increasing the power of both its quadrupedal and anthropomorphic powers during intense battle, if given enough time to grow. Legend states it is destined to grow so large as to swallow Asgard's sun whole, as was proven when it had done just so during Final Ragnarok. And digestive shapeshifting. After being studied by AIM, Fenris also learned that it can consume the form of people it has devoured for a minimum of 24 hours at a time after consumption, making it a literal wolf in sheep's clothing, which is a fun call out there. Something else here, superhumanly acute senses, right? Being of beastly origin, Fenris possesses largely enhanced senses of greater level, even those of certain animals, both of natural and even mystical origins, enabling it to see and hear distant objects more clearly than the norm for most Midgard creatures, and identify and track its prey purely by scent alone. Regenerative healing factor, again, some of these things are terms and we don't need to dive all the way into, but Fenris Wolf is and was able to, I know some of the images you may have seen here, I don't know if it passed, but it was briefly armed with a tooth-shaped Uru hammer, which was forged for it by Surtur. So again, all these tie-ins make sense with some of the cards we're getting for the month, etc., etc. All the lore kind of ties together very nicely. So that being said, let us move on to Fenris Wolf as a card in Marvel Snap. All right, so Fenris Wolf is a 2/3 with the activate ability resurrect your opponent's highest power discarded or destroyed card on your side of this location. So at first glance, this is one of the exciting cards for this month that seemingly has strong application. You can get it down on the board early, has a fairly decent stat line, nothing over the moon, but 2/3 is pretty straightforward, right? It's not like weak, but you know, 2/3 is respectable. It's not like a 2/4 or 2/5. It's respectable, right? The activate ability is nice because then there's that trigger where you combine this with, again, we'll get into where it can be used with cards obviously like Shang-Chi, right? So you know you're getting ready to play Shang-Chi. You put down the Chi, you activate the Fenris Wolf, bada bing, bada boom. That card that dies on your opponent's side is now on your side, right? So a lot of people playing Surtur, those big card decks aren't going anywhere. A lot of people playing Thanos with big cards. So Fenris Wolf stands to be quite the, let's be clear, Shang-Chi is a card that you don't have to force into a lot of decks. That is a card that naturally has a home across the board in a lot of decks when the meta requires it to be there, which is kind of where we're at right now. So Fenris Wolf is coming into a nice meta game where it stands to be very useful paired with Shang-Chi, etc. Now the discard application is a little bit trickier, right? That requires you to maybe do some things that you're not normally doing, such like Moon Knight, which I think is probably the best direction to go, because if you're looking at something like a Silver Samurai, for example, where it's discarding that lowest, I always mess this up, lowest cost? No, lowest power, right? Lowest power. Somebody will correct me, but that's riskier, where you're hoping it maybe hits Null, Iron Man, etc., but those, people are playing a lot of Iron Man, but getting away from the Agent Venom decks, that's kind of enter at your own risk. But I will say there is at least the strong creativity aspect of it, where Fenris Wolf says, okay, you remember those cards you don't play a lot of, like Silver Samurai? Maybe you might want to play that a little bit more. Maybe there's, a world where you play a little Moon Knight, you play a little Silver Samurai, you little Tekken, a little Fenris Wolf, and you're doing some hand hate type of deck, not necessarily all in discard specifically, because that's not where you want this to be, right? You're not hoping that you run into a discard player and the discard, because what's getting discarded? that you can get on your side, because most things getting discarded in a discard deck are going back into the opponent, going back into the player's hand. Apocalypse, Swarm, Scorn, all of that stuff, right? So, okay. So I will say that Fenris Wolf might have some application in discard deck using Gambit. Okay, so Gambit hits something on your side. You don't really care what it is. It gets destroyed. You activate the Fenris Wolf. It brings it back on your side. There's some application where that's actually really good. So those are some ideas that you can maybe do with Fenris Wolf. This has been a hyped card, and along with Gore the God Butcher, probably some of the two of the strongest cards of the month. I know everybody's still hyping up Malekith, and I get it, Malekith is fine. But Fenris Wolf, I think, if I have to definitively put a stamp on this, I'm gonna say this card goes into the A tier. Now, asterisk, very quick asterisk and caveat to that. I think that it maybe starts out in the high B tier and maybe kind of smooths out into the A tier. But if you're asking me to say, okay, put a number on this right now, I'm gonna say, or put a letter on it or whatever, put it in a place, I'm gonna put it in the A tier. Fenris Wolf, A tier. Because I'm sure some people will come for my head if I don't. It's all good. It is what it is. Now, bottom line, A, B, C, whatever the case may be, I think that this is a card that you want to use resources for, right? Of all the cards this month, this and Gore the God Butcher are where you want to use your resources. I told you when I did my last videos how I felt about Malekith and Frigga. Fenris Wolf, I think, is a card that you want to get. Just be very careful, because we're getting a lot of very, very good cards in December, and you're going to want to have resources for those cards as well. At least 3 cards out of that month, right? So that being said, Fenris Wolf, is it a yeah? Is it a nah? It is a yeah. So go on, get you some Fenris Wolf, enjoy, have fun, do some creative deck building, have a good time. I am Flash. This is Yeah or Nah. Come back next week where we check out the brand new card coming into Marvel Snap, and as we know, next week it will be Gore the God Butcher. I will catch y'all next week. Peace.